Got 3 o'clock, Tom. All set.
All set. Thank you, Stone. Before I open the hearing for the Barnstable Conservation Commission, I would like to ask George to do a roll call for the quorum purpose.
Abadili is absent. Foster?
Present.
Gilmore present. Ern?
Present.
Lee?
Present.
Tangney?
Present.
Sample?
Present.
Administrator Darcy Carley?
Present.
Staff member Kim Kavanaugh?
Present.
Agent Ed Hoops?
Present.
You have a quorum and the floor is yours, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Acting under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and or Chapter 237 of the Code of Town of Barnstable, the Barnstable Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, January the 16th, 2024, at 3 p.m. on the application of 15 Hyannis Avenue, LLC, Antonio Nader. The hearing will be held remotely. As televised on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. The plans and application are on file and may be reviewed by scheduling appointment by sending emails requests to Darcy Curley at 230 South Street, Hyannis. This meeting is being recorded and transmitted on the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. In accordance with the Mass General Law 38, Section 20, the chair must inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting. And so please make your presence known. Hearing none, this afternoon's hearing agenda is posted on the town's website. On the agenda next to each application is the amount owed to the Town of Barnstable for the cost of advertisement. Please send your checks to the Conservation Division at 230 South Street before the hearing. Remote participations. The Conservation Commission's public hearing will be held by remote participation as a result of an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed by the governor on March 29, 2023, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Remote public access to this hearing shall be provided in the following manner. 1. The hearing will be televised via the Town of Barnstable's Government Access Channel. 2. The real-time public comment can be addressed to the Conservation Commission utilizing the Zoom link 821-699-74152 or use the toll-free phone number 888-475-4499 as shown on the agenda. 3rd, the public can also email the comment to darcy.curley@town.barnstable.ma.us at least 8 hours prior to the hearing. This afternoon, the first item on the agenda is the revised plan Thomas and Denise Craft, SE3-5997. Lynn.
Good, excuse me, afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to try to do something very special today because I practiced with a meal before the hearing and share my screen with you.
Please,
So,
thank you.
let's see how that goes. Oh, geez. How about that? Can you see that?
Yep.
Yay. All right, this is for a simple plan revision. Initially, they were going to just rehab the garage by making exterior improvements. Now they would like to remove and replace it with an expanded footprint. All the work straddles the 100-foot buffer zone. It's occurring over existing paved driveway, which as part of this revision will be converted to a native stone driveway. The there's an actual net reduction of a couple square feet in hardscape with the project, and I think it's pretty cut and dry, so I'll just try to answer your questions.
Thank you, Lynn. Any question from the commissioner? I'm not seeing anything. Could I have a motion to approve the revised plan as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster?
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Ern?
Bill?
Bill?
Sorry, aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Tangney?
Aye.
Sampu?
Aye.
That's unanimous, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Good luck, Lynn.
Thank you.
We have 3 extension requests. The first 2 are Rope Farm LLC SE3-5835 And this is the first request. Anyone from Ropes Farms?
Hello, I'm Lauren Taylor with Crawford Land Management.
Hi.
So this permit was issued back in 2021. It was for invasive species removal on the bank and at the top of the bank. The initial restoration work was done in March of 2021, but the restoration plantings weren't put in until this past fall of 2023, just because our company hadn't been contracted up until that point. So at this point, we're requesting a 3-year extension just so that we can continue to maintain and monitor those plantings for the required 3 years after their installation.
Thank you. Any question from the commissioner? Could I have a motion to approve the extension request?
Moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Sampu,
Aye.
Tangney,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Foster,
Aye.
that's unanimous.
Thank you. The second extension request is Rope Farm LLC SE3-5875. Lauren?
Yep, good afternoon. Again, Lauren Taylor with Crawford Land Management. So this permit is for that same property. It was permitting the raise and rebuild of an existing structure and then some additional site improvements, as well as revegetating the entire 50-foot buffer to the bank. No work has been done on this permit yet, just because the current owners were looking to sell the property, but they haven't done so. They're anticipating selling it this spring, so we're just looking to extend the permit for 3 years so that they can continue to do the work that was approved under that permit.
Thank you. Angela, you have raised your hand?
Yes, thank you. Just clarification, these are the same owners from March of 2021 on this property?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Could I have a motion to approve the extension request?
So moved.
Second. Roll call.
Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Tangney,
Aye.
Sampu,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
The third extension request is Frank Responde, SE3-5771. This is the first request. Is Frank here? No,
Tom,
not.
I'm sorry. No, he could not attend. He had a work commitment. But he did send a description, great description on the extension permit, explaining what parts were completed and what was not. And I did send the commissioners the very recent annual report. It just came in, so they're up to date on what they need to do.
Yes, I just saw the annual report. Cranberry bog farm there. Any question on this one? Could I have a motion to approve the extension request?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster,
Aye.
Sampu,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Tangney,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
that's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. We have one enforcement order, Elizabeth B. Donahue, trustee, and Elizabeth B. Donahue, trust, 112 Scudder Lane, Barnstable, maps 259, parcel 013, alteration of a wetland resource area, coastal bank, town, and alteration of the buffer to a wetland resource area, salt marsh, by cutting vegetations and placing fill, wood chips. Ed? Ed, unmute yourself.
You'd think I'd know that by now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was brought to me by one of the commissioners. You could see this from, I believe, from the Oyster Flats out in the harbor. The area. Let me get my thing going here. The area in question is again 112 Scudder's Lane. The bay is out, our harbor is out this way. There is a coastal bank that runs more or less right along this sort of very poorly drawn line. I apologize, but I was doing that freehand. And then a salt marsh and a little bit of bordering vegetation over this direction. You can see from 2016 that the homeowner, the current homeowner, bought this property in 2014. Prior to that, there had been a long time where the same owner had been living there. There had been some more heavier impacts to the area, but this is pretty much what it looked like on the left when the current homeowner moved in. You can see that was just all low lying ground cover and very, very low shrubs that are in the area. As of April 8th, 2023, you can see this more of a bare patch here. It's been there was a little bit more clearing done on the ground cover, and then wood chips that were installed sometime in this past year, sometime after April 8th of last year. Current photos, if you hadn't been to see it or you're not familiar with the area, again, this is the left-hand picture is looking this direction. You can see on the bank, and photo 2 in the middle is looking out toward the harbor, and then the third photo on the right is looking back across the bank again. You can see that the area was again pretty much cleared, but there is this heavy layer of wood chips that are there as well. The landscaper is with us. If you have any questions for him, again, you can see that the area had been maintained somewhat like this. Not as much. There hadn't been as much clearing, and there was certainly this heavy layer of wood chip that was placed down recently. So just pretty standard enforcement order conditions. Again, we're going to ask for a sketch plan for restoration. It'd be submitted by the end of this month, showing all the different resource areas and the planting palette. Stone wall should be accepted as the top of bank. It establishes a demarcation line that will, on the resource side, be designated as a no-mow, no disturbance zone. And then the standard native species of trees, shrubs, and ground cover being planted in the area. Wood chips should remain until sometime later, early spring. Those wood chips should then be removed by hand prior to just immediately prior to the installation of the new planting area, and then the standard three years of monitoring reports, annual monitoring reports. With that, I don't have anything else. If you'd like to ask me or the landscaper, Ryan Jones is here from Earthly Landscaping.
Thank you, Ed. Any questions from the commissioner? No? Pete?
Pete.
So I'll remind the commissioners and the landscaper and the owner of the home that Barnstable Harbor is an area of critical environmental concern, and both the state and the town do our best to try to maintain the high water quality of this embayment. Lacking a well-vegetated buffer area diminishes the ability of nutrient uptake and sediment control from the upland. So having a well-vegetated buffer is for the benefit of the entire bay and all the residents who have land there or who go shellfishing there. So thank you, Ed, for a very thorough job here.
Thank you, Pete. Any other questions from the commissioner? I don't have any questions.
I have one question.
Who?
Ryan Jones, Earth Day Landscaping, representing Lisa Donahue. She was, due to some issue with the mail, she didn't get this notice until last Friday. And then I got an email last Friday as well. So we're wondering if we can provide the sketch maybe into, like, instead of the end of the month, do like the 15th of February.
Yep, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
No, I mean, right now you can't do anything right now.
Of course.
So,
yeah.
February 15 makes sense. Could I have a motion to approve the enforcement order as written?
So moved.
With
Second.
February 15th, you want to do the February 15th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say February 15th.
Amended the motions, approve the enforcement order with the amended date of February 15th.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Agnew,
Aye.
Van Poot.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck, Brian.
Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.
We have two NOI. The first one is 15 Hyannis Avenue, LLC, raise and replace existing family dwelling. Connections to the town sewer at 15 Hyannis Avenue, Hyannis, as shown in the assessors maps 287 parcel 118. Dan? Dan and
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the commission. Dan Ojala from Downcape Engineering, helping out the defect areas. Courtney with the 15 Hyannis Avenue. On this one, we had done some work in the past, and many years ago, Lynn Hamlin helped us out with a couple of filings. They constructed a pond in the back, and there's a pipe which runs along the north boundary of this property. That drains that. Apparently, there's 11 or 12 acres of town road, and everybody's yard drains way from the west off Locust into this low swampy area that's in the back of the property. And then that always had, at least since the 60s, predating the act, a vitrified clay pipe that ran basically under our building into the across Hyannis Drive to the east. That pipe was relocated. Darcy reminded us that we didn't have that on the plan, and somehow it did get by us, but I was out there myself. I as-built it in 1996. You folks had allowed it to be reconstructed around to the north, and so that does exist today, and we can get that on the plan for you to look at. I'll pull up a copy of the plan while we're chatting here, so you can look at that area. But the important thing is that what we're doing here, we think is a nice improvement. The neighbor across the street very nicely appropriated funds to extend the sewer into this area. And so we've proposed, you can see on the plan, a sewer connection. That's the ability to do that was due to that extension that was completed about a year and a half ago. The very end here, we weren't able to hit gravity, but we were able to get it with a little E1 grinder pump. So that's the way that we're going to be able to connect in.
Dan, are you sharing the drawing?
Yeah, I'll try and share. Is the connection not that great? Let me see here. So share screen, screen 2. Share. That should be coming up. Let me know when you've got it.
Yep, it's coming.
Okay.
Yep.
So existing conditions are pretty comparable to proposed conditions. There's a large home on the property existing with a big driveway. A lot of the drive is within the buffer. The proposed conditions are a big house on the property with some of the driveway removed from the buffer. There's a little bit of a trade-off in that there's a coastal bank across the street where we've got a little bit of driveway that's introduced into the buffer. Darcy did ask for some mitigation breakdown. I do have that and can submit that perhaps with an amended plan showing the pipe. But I will read it to you so that you know the exact situation. There's 1,487 square foot of driveway within the 0 to 50. That's going down all the way to 267 feet, so over 1,000-foot drop. The house 0 to 50 is 1,480, proposed is 2,080, so a modest increase there. 50 to 100 situation, and again, there's no patio within the 50. Existing proposed between 50 and 100, there's about 952 square foot of patio, 2093 of house, and 2427 of driveway, and then proposed it's going down about 700 square foot total, but there's 2136 of driveway and 2628 of house. So it's a net reduction of 1328 square foot of hardscape. That's principally by pulling the driveway out and extensive driveway out. Again, a benefit of this project is we're getting rid of the sewer and getting rid of the large leaching system and introducing the sewer. We'll take a look again about that the drainage in the pond and make sure that it's clear. Darcy said she saw something bubbling up, which is a little bit concerning. I'll go out after this rain and look at it, but there was the 8-inch smoothbore HDPE pipe that drains the town road and all the water that runs into this wetland along the north side of the house, and then over and connects into an existing pipe and across the street. So it's filtered somewhat by the wetland, but that has been a relief valve for this area for many, many years, and it was put in under your supervision and with proper permissions. So we won't be disturbing that. We are introducing the new sewer, water service, picking the house up a bit. We're going to go to the top of foundation at 17, where right now it's at 14, and some grading around the house. As Darcy had mentioned, and perhaps the outlet is a little bit clogged, so the water's a little bit higher than it usually is, but the wetland, because of that way that it handles, it comes up into the lawn area, so we're going to strip that out and put in wildflower mix, stop mowing it. In the dry season, you can get away with mowing it, but that will all now be revegetated. So that's about 1,150 square foot, where we wouldn't really need any mitigation because we're going down 1,300 square foot. We are nonetheless providing 1,150 square foot of mitigation by pulling up that lawn, and we can demarcate that in a manner sufficient to the commission if you would like. Again, Brad Hall helped out with the wetland delineation, and we feel that the net it is an improvement. It's an area that's been developed since the 1800s. The subdivision around us, and there was an old pond that was filled. We made a man-made pond 25 years ago and got all that permitted. We'll do gutters and downspouts to dry wells that are shown around the building. So that will be a nice improvement. And hopefully you would find your way to be able to approve this subject to perhaps an amended plan showing that pipe and any other notations that you would like, but I'd be glad to answer any questions which you have on the project. Thank you.
Dan, you mentioned that the man-made pond was approved a long time ago, right?
That's correct. Yeah, 1993-ish time frame.
On the revised plan, can you put that approval DEP number on that with the pond?
Yep. Yeah, I can do that for sure. And noted on the pipe as well. That was both done at the similar time frame.
Okay, thank you. Louise?
Let's see, you mentioned the spring that Darcy referred to. I was out there also. I was there on Thursday and saw the spring. It's really quite spectacular. I couldn't believe my eyes for a minute. I'm wondering if there's another pipe that's in there that's next to one of the other two that you mentioned. And I'm feeling that needs to get sorted out because an awful lot of water has ended up in the wetland. The wetland is overflowing.
Yeah.
And yes, we have had a lot of rain, but we do have a lot of rain from time to time. in the summer, recent summers, we have had major storms. The lawn between the house and the wetland is very, very spongy and wet. And I keep wondering if, if you plant lawn in a wetland and you mow it enough, it's going to look like lawn, except under exceptional circumstances. So although Brad Hall did a delineation, I just wonder if the current weather conditions that we're having these days, not in a micro sense, but in a macro sense, if the delineation of that wetland may have changed, and that it's moving, the boundary is moving up closer to the house. So I'd like to see a better definition of those pipes. I didn't see the other one that you mentioned. In fact, you didn't have your screen showing the drawing when you mentioned that one. Could you point out where that?
Yeah, so it would be right in the vicinity of BVW flag 2. I'll zoom in a little bit on that. And then perhaps we could communicate where those bubbles were. But that the 10-inch pipe that drains the wetland is right about BVW 2, I think right about that 7 contour line there.
Yep, I saw that. Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, that would be the terminus of that pipe. Where was it bubbling up from?
Which pipe? Is that the one that drains the neighborhood?
That's the new one that drains. Yeah. So there's a pipe that comes in from the west. Well, I'm sorry. There's a catch basins at the bottom of the hill over on the main road to the west of us, and then it is a ditch that runs through and into this pond area. And then when this fills up, the invert was set at, I believe, elevation 7. We had studied that to see what the exact elevation of that pipe should be. We proposed it at 8 NAVD 88, which would be 7 on the current datum. And I'll double check that, but we did certify to the commission what the grade was. And the site is tough. There was an old, there's peat and so forth. There was an old pond. There was some fill over the peat. And it does not drain well. So you're absolutely right. It fills right up. All the road runoff fills right up and comes up onto the lawn. And so sort of what we're doing with that is the spongiest portions of the lawn are going to be converted to wetland. Well, they are wetland, but we're going to put wildflower meadow and stop mowing them. So I think that will cure that. To your point, I think it's the wettest winter we've ever had to date right now. It's breaking all the records. And if that 10-inch outlet to the pipe is at all clogged, that could be the source of a lot of problems too. So we'll investigate that and make sure we whistle that out so that it doesn't overtop the area completely.
Let's see. I just, if you could just simply answer my question. You mentioned 2 pipes, and there's a so-called spring, which is probably.
Yeah, where was that?
That was at the north area where you said there was another pipe that drains the neighborhood.
Right in that area there, it was bubbling up?
Right next to it.
Okay.
Now, where is the 3rd pipe?
Well, the old pipe was in this area here.
Where?
Right about BVW flag 3. There is a manhole there. I got to double check what the heck that thing is. There was some kind of an old manhole structure there. I don't know if that was an inlet structure or not. That is shown on the plot. It's right just north of BVW flag 3. There was a couple of old structures there that we found, and we refound one of them. I believe there's a second one there, so we can investigate what those are. But again, the area has been highly modified. Right in that area, there was a deep pond originally, and then it was filled with your permission. Well, it was filled in the 60s. I don't think anybody could give permission then, but then later in the 90s, we rebuilt the pond where it says man-made pond. So basically moved from this area here to this area here and made it a little bit bigger. but there's old peat and fibrous soils that do not drain very well under that area. So to your point, I think if we're pulling up to the a little bit drier ground, up to the 8 contour almost around in here, I think that'll improve the situation where we'll just let what wants to be wetland run wet, and what's upland will be lawn and demarcated off.
Well, in terms of just my visual perception of where the wetland starts, the lawn to the east is very, very wet and spongy, and covers an area that is not marked as being destined to be mitigation at all. So I'm not feeling very comfortable about the plan without more study.
All right, so we can take a look at that corner down there, probably between wetlands 5 and 6, where I do see that that is a low area that wasn't demarcated wetland. But the thing to remember is that, what determines a wetland is over a whole growing season, not the wettest time of the year, which is, late winter, early spring. But, also August and July, and then whether there's enough, water close to the surface to create a wetland community over the whole growing season, not just at a flood like we're having right now. But
Right.
we can certainly look at that and see if we can adjust it a little bit in that southwest corner while we're back on looking at it.
Well, what are you going to do about all the drainage coming from the rest of the neighborhood?
Well, we're just going to maintain that pipe, an 8-inch pipe. No matter how much water, you've got 11 acres. I mean, I'm sure you could use an 18-inch pipe at the peak of the storm. But basically what happens, if you've got a several acre plus area, it'll surge up, it'll take the peak out, and it'll act like a reservoir. And then the outlet pipe 8-inch will be running, say, a cubic foot per second out of there, and it'll settle back down. So you might get a very short surge of water during a big storm, but it'll go down within hours. And so I think that what we've got there now, as long as the inlet is protected from being clogged, is wholly sufficient. If there's a problem with the pipe, we'll definitely recommend they clear it out, and because otherwise they will be flooded out for sure. So we'll check out the pipe and make sure that it's operating properly.
Well, you're still going to have the same volume of water coming in there, whether it is, one rate versus another, are you not?
Yeah, but again, we like water. We want the pond. It is an attractive feature, and we have to make sure that the level that the pipe is set at, where it can surge up and go back down to, is a reasonable level. And as long as that is operating properly, it should function hydraulically very well, as it has for many years. It took those big storms, and there wasn't any inordinate flooding. So unless something has very recently clogged the pipe, we should be in pretty good shape overall.
Well, I'd like to know what the spring is coming from.
Yeah, fair enough. We can look at that, but again, we'll investigate it, but it could well be subsurface. You've got about 4 or 5 feet of sand over about 6 feet of peat, and then you've got sand and gravel, but by that time you're way below the groundwater table. So having a restrictive layer like that with some sand on top, you can get some funny hydraulics, but we'll check it out and see if we can give you an idea of what's happening out there.
Okay, thank you. I would appreciate that.
Bill? Bill?
You may be
Okay, I'm not on mute. All of a sudden, Louise was seizing up. The pictures I'm having some, okay. I think this seems in general to be a pretty good project. There's less hardscape in the 0 to 50 and in the 50 to 100. You're plugging into a sewer system, and you're peeling back lawn from a bordering vegetated wetland. So overall, that's all very positive. I just had one question, and that is that you're planting, quote unquote, meadow plants. You're going to have meadow. And I'm relatively new here, and every time we put in a meadow, it's usually in an upland. you have a a meadow, and we're going to put in it's in an upland. This is literally on a bordering vegetated wetland, and I haven't seen that where wow, someone was doing something literally in a wetland, and now you're peeling back. Oh no, and we're putting in essentially wetland plants. So I'm just wondering, might there not be some alternative? I mean, again, RC and who knows who here, but is that a good idea to be using meadow plants? Shouldn't there be some kind of more wetland plants that are going in there? More wetland tolerant plants?
Yeah, I could chime in. That's a fair point. Instead of using the normal wildflower mix, we could probably use the New England retention basin mix, which has a lot more wetland tolerant sedges and shrub, sort of grasses in it. So I think that's a good call. It is quasi lawn now, but it's wet, and I think that's would be a great edit to the plan. I'll make that change.
I'm seeing Pete giving me a thumbs up on that. Is that, Darcy, is that an appropriate thing? I mean, are there bushes that should be put in there or what? I mean, what he just recommended, is that a good idea?
That is a good idea.
Yeah, and in the past, we've planted a bunch of red maples and some other trees in the wetland area itself. So it's, I think it'll be a good blend.
Okay, well, that would be a revision I would appreciate. Thank you.
Darcy, do you want to review those selected wetland plantings?
Yeah, Dan can send those to me and I can shoot it back to him that I reviewed it and they're okay with it.
Okay. Any other question from the commissioner? None. Channel 18, any public comment on this?
Seeing none.
None. And we have the DEP number for this project is 6 SE3-6150. Could I have a motion to approve this project subject to receipt of a revised plan showing the breakdown of the mitigation area, the existing black pipe, and the DEP number for the man-made pond and the
plants
and the types of the wetland planting is subject to the staff review.
Did we have demarcation too?
Oh, and plus the demarcation on the wetland buffer line.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Agnew.
Aye.
Sampu.
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Good luck, Dan.
All right, I cannot figure out how to stop sharing my screen, but I'll bail out and we'll be all set. I really appreciate your time and we'll investigate that carefully and get you the revised plan. Thank you for your time very much.
Thank you. The second NOI is Antonia Neda, proposed extension of existing pier at 30 Oxford Drive, contoured as shown on the assessor's map 021, parcel 062. Hannah?
Good afternoon, everyone. I will share my screen so that we can have the plan up in front of us.
Thank you.
Can everyone see the plan?
Yes.
Awesome. So this is a proposed notice of intent to maintain an existing portion of a pier, which was formerly approved by the Conservation Commission. I'm blanking out on the date, but Darcy had sent me the plans earlier today. At the time, the owner wanted to expand that existing pier from the fixed pier that exists now, but he didn't get around to it and instead sold the property. So these new property owners would like to do the same thing. They would like to keep the existing portion of the pier, which is 12 feet long by 4 feet wide, as a fixed pier. The reason behind this being that the rest of the pier, which will extend to about 33.5 feet out into the waters of No Bottom Pond, is best removed and installed seasonally when you've got a platform, especially considering this platform occupies already cleared space at the edge of the pond, it would just be convenient for the installation and removal to keep that there. So as I mentioned, this extension is, I'll just zoom over to the side profile. Going from the 12 feet of the existing pier will extend 35 feet out into No Bottom Pond. The proposed fixed pier will be replaced in kind and given helical piles for better support, as the current support is not as stable. And the supports for the seasonal pier and ending portion of the seasonal pier, which will be orientated in a T shape, will have footings that will rest on the lake bed. So for this project, there is an existing 4-foot wide access that should be wide enough to access the edge of the pond. They shouldn't need any vehicles. Typically, these helical piles are installed using some sort of bobcat and device, but the quote that they received from the pier installation company is that they would be able to do this by hand, as well as the installation of the seasonal pier. So no clearing is proposed within the 0 to 50-foot buffer zone to BVW, or within the 0 to 50-foot buffer zone to the edge of inland bank. So it should be a pretty minimal process. Any rutting that might occur bringing materials back there or going in on foot will be returned to the original grade, seeded with some native grass and covered with hay to stabilize the area. That covers most of the important information, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to conservation.
Thank you, Hannah. The plan that Hannah is showing on the screen right now is a revised plan dated January the 16th. So, questions, Bill?
These helical piles are going to be in permanently, right? But the actual dock is being taken out seasonally? Is that what I'm understanding?
So yeah, the helical portions are going to only be installed for the fixed portion. So that's this most inland portion, which is currently existing at the site. They'd like to replace this in kind with some stronger material and have a better support for that existing edge of the pier. So that's 12 feet long by 4 feet wide. That is going to be permanent. The rest will be seasonal.
Thank you.
Pete?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a 12-foot pier there now. What is the purpose of extending this out another 20 feet? I mean, what's the reason, the need?
The purpose is for launching kayaks, no motorized boats, just to get the appropriate water depth for enjoying the pond, either by being on the dock, fishing and swimming, and by launching kayaks.
Okay, because I think I've heard Commissioner Foster say how challenging it is getting in and out of a kayak from a dock. And I mean, so how much swimming is done in No Bottom Pond? I mean, I've not tried swimming there myself, but I bet there are leeches there with a name like No Bottom Pond. So again, the homeowner can perhaps speak to its current use right now and the deficiencies of a 12-foot dock, but I am interested in needs of things as opposed to if a 12-foot dock is working fine or not, the reasoning behind this extension. So thank you.
Yeah, so currently the existing 12-foot pier does start sort of landward. You can see the wetland flags that I've hung at the property, and then it quite extends out a bit with dense shrubby vegetation, which at the time that I was there was inundated. I'm not sure if that's typical for this site, but in terms of enjoying the water and being able to pull a kayak in and out, that would be hard there to begin with. So the purpose of this extension is to get it beyond the edge of the vegetation, which is pretty dense, if I remember right. Buttonbush and blueberry. I would have to pull up my notes again to see, but it's not fun to walk through. So this is just a way to get out onto the pond. In terms of swimming in leeches, I don't know if I'm the best judge. I grew up swimming in ponds with leeches, so. But yeah, the main purpose is just to get it out past that dense shrubby vegetation, which appears to be inundated for quite a bit of the year. Might pull up some photos. It's a bit blurry and it's a little in the distance, but you can see how the existing pier, which is right here, doesn't really get far beyond the top of the canopy. So you'd need a little bit more distance to get out and enjoy that part of the pond, especially since it's pretty shallow in there. I don't know how easy it would be to get in and out using a kayak, but we'll see.
Thank you, Hannah. I mean, that's Louis' comment from the last time when we have a seasonal pier, and that would be one of the considerations. And at that point was, even though it's a different pond, but that would be one of the considerations. Any other question, George?
Yes, I think actually what Louise was referring to was the getting into a kayak from a float. If I'm not mistaken, is that correct, Louise?
Right.
Yeah, in this one, it's proposed to have is that a platform on the end?
So that at the end, it was originally a float, though with this revised plan, which I apologize for not bringing up first, this was a very last minute, just trying to get this in. Once we understood that fixed piers were not as acceptable, we revised the plan and the edge of.
So you want to say something?
Yeah, Mr. Kaiser, can you mute for now?
I'm sorry. Yes.
It's just not for now for comment. I will call the public comments. So.
The problem is that the level of the kayak and the water level relative to the surface that you're getting onto, if you follow what I'm saying, it's not like you're on land, because it's much higher than the water level, or sufficiently higher than the water level that you really have to lift yourself up and onto the dock surface, whether it be a fixed platform or a float.
Yep. So the end of it is fixed. And my assumption would be they would take the kayak as far inland as they need based on this profile, and then be able to step out, shimmy out. With water shoes, it shouldn't be too bad, and then they could pull the kayak back out.
Well, but to Pete's point, you might not need all that length in order to go through the process that you just described.
Right.
Right? But it might be that for swimming purposes, I mean, if we're worried about leeches, I think you don't want to put your feet down into the muck in the bottom of the pond. That's where the leeches are, I think. So you probably want to have more depth for swimming and also for fishing.
I think the distance into the pond would be sufficient just for both of those activities without extending even further. This is sort of like a compromise between the two, with this depth that they can reach at the end of the pier. So perhaps not deep enough, but that would be a bigger pier. So maybe just quite enough for both fishing and swimming.
Thank you, George. I did not hear, you didn't quite finish yet.
Yeah, Yeah, thank you, Hannah, for that. So the end of the pier is in fact, not afloat. So I'm assuming that there'll be a ladder at the end of the pier. And I would picture you pulling up to the ladder, climbing out of the kayak up the ladder for the end of the pier. So that was my question. Was it still afloat or was it fixed? You've answered
Yep,
that.
it's stable, and I don't think we've proposed a ladder, but if that's something that needs to be required on the plan, then we can revise the plan and speak with the applicant to make sure that that's what they want. But it wouldn't go all the way down to the ground. It would sort of be hanging on.
I think that would make it a lot easier getting in and out of a kayak. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, George. Any other question from the commissioner? None. Channel 18, any public comment? I think the first one is Eric.
Yes, thank you. I can give you a little background on No Bottom Pond because I've lived on it for over 25 years. This is a little bit kettle hole pond. It's shared by about 7 homes with a public right-of-way at one end. The pond averages less than 400 feet across by my reckoning. It's no longer wisely swimmable, but the band of conservation around it provides us with some habitats for some really cool birds, usual waterfowl and transient, and turtles and frogs. The value for those of us fortunate to live on it is contingent on one thing, and that is leaving it alone. The enjoyment of the greenery, of the wildlife, the view, occasional paddle around its perimeter. Pond's very much an extension of all of our yards because it's so small especially. And because of the closeness of the pond, any infraction to one area is an insult to all. According to page 20, part 3 of this proposal, the intended purpose of the new larger pier is to, quote, reach the outer edge of the vegetation and approximately 2 to 3 feet of water. The previous owners were successful against the neighbors' in-person protest at conservation meeting some years ago in building the current pier. The pier already is past the vegetation berm and in deep water, as evidenced by the fact that there is a swimming ladder on it. There's no need for any expanded construction. They have what they want by their own definition with the existing pier. The existing structure, and even worse, the possibility of a bigger project, is simply not copacetic to the nature of our collective pond. It's not necessary and it's not wanted. I trust the Commission will show due diligence this time around and not only deny this project, but renege on any possibility of additions to the existing structure. The House also has a gravel input where they can put in with a kayak if they want to, which is much easier than from a dock. Anybody knows that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
And I'll mute now.
Is there another one? I think is.
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I think Kim will probably need Mr. Kaiser's address.
Kaiser's address is 25 Queen Anne Lane, correct?
Jim Redden is trying to speak. I don't know whether you can hear me.
No, just 1 minute. Let me check on this address first. Eric, your address is 25 Queen Anne Lane, correct?
He's shaking his head, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jim?
Okay, hi. My name is Jim Redden. My wife and I own the property at 172 Rail-End, which is one of the property owners on the pond. So we just got notice of this a little while ago, like over the weekend, because apparently we were not a butter this time, although the first project that they quoted, we were in a butter. So I just have some comments on the package. That's what I wanted to do here. Starting kind of with the project description itself is very confusing to me. I've read it very clearly, but first off, I believe there should have been a drawing that shows the existing conditions followed by the new conditions. The way they're mushed together, you really can't tell what's what. As Eric had just pointed out, there is an existing pier there, which was approved in 2013, and there's a float attached to that pier, and it has a ladder, and they do swim off it, and they do kayak off it. So it's surprising to find the rationale is that they need a new one. The other thing that we looked at, the actual drawing is significantly wrong in that it shows a float or something in the property next door to them, which we don't know what that means, but it doesn't exist. It seems to show the float way out in the water, which is not where it is. And what's odd is the actual drawing that they have in their proposal or in the NOI from the aerial view shows the float and the dock right where it should be and right where it is. And it's not where, it doesn't seem to be where they're showing it. So I was hoping that they would at least be able to clear up and draw something. I admit though, the drawing that they submitted, it does say there was no site work done. It becomes apparent, but so there is a note saying it's not right because they didn't do it yet. The piling detail is very poor. It's just a piling. So they're going to do a rotary piling. This will be the first time anything is going into the bottom of the pond. The other pier that was approved in 2013 is not approved as far as I can tell because it was not built. There was a 3-year moratorium on that permit. So this is a brand new application to put a pier in a no bottom pond. If you're going to do that, a piling detail, like I said, I believe there's a sunlight impact on the pond. There's going to be more area covered than there was. And it seems to me that we should get all this information in front of us before a decision is made. I could go on, but we've only had this a little while. But that's kind of some of my statements.
Thank you, Jim.
And I sent a copy just today to Darcy, sort of summarizing what I said.
Yes, I got your email.
I'm sorry it was late. Like I said, we just heard about it, so I know it should have been in earlier.
That's okay. I got your email. Same thing for Eric's. He also sent in the email as well, but he speaks, so I just kind of mentioned that there's 2 comments from kind of one. Eric is against it. You just asking for additional information and so forth. So, if that's correct, so the drawing that you're seeing on the screen is a revised plan. The one that you have looking at that is a different drawing. So, I don't know what...
I do agree. I'd like to be clear. I mean, I picked up the package. I don't know if I have the right one or not now. I'll have to check afterwards.
We just got the revised plan this afternoon. So the one that on the screen is the one that is revised, the one that you have, depending on the timing wise, whether Darcy sent you the correct one.
Excuse me for interrupting. I won't interrupt, but it was clear there was a big float. Float was very much a part of the first one. Did they take the float out in this revision? Because that's a significant revision also to be coming at the last minute.
No, you just mentioned about the existing floats. So what
okay, excuse me.
Yeah. So what I'm saying,
the NOI does call for a float. People earlier were asking whether it called for a float or not. My copy calls for a float.
Yeah, but
it had been revised as of today. That's why it's out of date.
Right. The other issue is that we don't have the DEP number, so this has to be continuing. So Hannah can take a look and provide the revised plan in the next hearing on the continuing date so that we have more information on, before we vote on this. So I got 2 more comments from the Commissioner. Bill? Bill?
I'm sorry. I was saying that dock projects are really tricky. And we went through a kind of complicated one last week. And I've been, what would be the legal opposition to that? I think about John Abbott Dealey's question on that. And we do have a freshwater dock guideline. And one of the things it says is that it should be a seasonal dock. And I'll have to tell you that in the middle of our discussion here, my iPad completely blanked out. I had to sign back in, and it's like, oh God, this is not good. And so it's unclear to me whether the old dock was totally seasonal or not, but I'm gathering that with the helical piles, some of it is not going to be seasonal, it's going to be permanent. And so I'm reluctant to be approving a seasonal turning into a permanent if that's what we're doing. And because of my iPad, I'm not sure. Another guideline that we have is that it should not be pressure treated wood. And that's a question that I would have for the consultant. Is this going to be pressure treated wood? Because our guidelines says specifically you don't want to use that. It says materials, the pier should be manufactured from suitable materials such as aluminum, plastic, or composite, but not pressure-treated wood. That's our guidelines. So I'm left thinking we have these guidelines, and that's sort of our legal basis. One of the interesting things about this project is that it's not a great pond, and I'm thinking a great pond has additional issues that you have to deal with. And here, my impression is that when it's not a great pond, essentially it becomes a pie. Everybody kind of owns out to the middle in pie slices, and so then it becomes, well, what is our jurisdiction relative to dealing with docks on that? There is one issue under the Wetlands Protection Act that is maybe potentially legitimate, on which we might have a real concern, and that is the impact of wildlife. It's a small area. It has green heron, as claimed by Eric. And so it's like, you could, if you were to oppose it on a legal basis, thinking of John Abadili, you've got wildlife, and is it pressure treated, and is it permanent? And so those are my questions. And I'm sorry that I'm chiming in again with questions, because I lost contact on this Zoom for a bit. So if somebody could clarify, was this originally permitted, was it a totally removable dock, a seasonal dock, or was it permanent part of it? And is it treated?
Excuse me, Tom.
Aussie?
Yeah, if I can share the screen, I can try to help clarify this, because when we went over the file, I scanned or put this stuff on to send to you by email. So let me see if I can get.
I also have the plans from May of 2014 up, as well as June of 2014.
Okay. Okay. Can you see? So this is the ongoing conditions for the certificate of compliance. This was not a seasonal dock. It talked about having the grading, and on the certificate of compliance, it does mention that at the time, the as-built structure that was submitted was dated May 5th, 2014. But in this information, they were okayed to put out the complete dock. So, oh, 1 minute, let me see if I got to share that one. Okay, so when I went out there, they had just this small graded section that was on the May 5th, 2014 plan. And I allowed them, wrote down no pulling the vegetation in the water, access by normal use, can expand dock if needed per SE 35062. So they were allowed to go back and forth between this short section that you see in this picture to the original approved plan, which did have a float on it, which is, let's see.
The grading that you see in Darcy, if I'm correct, is the existing 12 feet.
Yes, yes.
That you're seeing right now.
Now, this was the plan that was dated January 22nd, 2013, and a float was permitted. So at one time you would just see the graded section right here, and then, but we did allow them to use the put in the section if they wanted it where the float was. And I don't know whether that helps you understand what's going on, but what is nice now, I believe, with the extension or with the expansion, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hannah, you're stating that the graded section would be the only part that would remain permanent, and then now that the rest of it would actually be a seasonal section.
Yep, that's right. So the original part of the pier or the dock that is currently that graded will be synthetic decking, no pressure treated wood. And that will be supported by the helical pilings, and the rest of the pier, which will end in another pier segment, not a float, will be seasonal, and there will be no permanent pilings that will be needed to install that.
What kind of material is that? Aluminum?
Synthetic decking?
No, the piling.
Oh, the pilings. Let's. It doesn't state it on the plan, but I can have that clarified.
Yeah, please do.
And I just had one question for Hannah. For the seasonal part, they're going to be able to get this out of the water without having to come down with any type of like an ATV or anything, and then store it up in the upland?
Yep, that's my understanding from the conversation that they had with the dock installation company, that they were going to be able to just carry this down there and install it by hand, and then store the seasonal portions of the pier in upland by the house.
Okay.
Thank you, Darcy. Pete?
You're welcome.
So we have at least one other individual within the public here that has knowledge of other piers that are on No Bottom Pond. My question is, how does the length of this one at 30-something feet compare with the existing docks that are on No Bottom Pond right now? Is it longer? Is it about the same? Or, that's my two questions. Is it longer than the other ones that are there? Or is it consistent with other docks that are on this pond? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Pete. Hannah, do you have any answer for this one, or should I go to Eric or Jim?
I wrote down the question. I believe that part of the confusion also comes from using some of the information on the surrounding floats from the previous plan, which was years ago. So this will have to be revised with some more updated information to show the existing size, location, and length of the surrounding piers, but I don't have that information right now.
Okay. Thank you, Hannah. Angela?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I realized the revision was done just today, so there's some question in that. But my specific question is the structure that's there right now functionable? Are they using it? Are they able to get into a kayak and go? And then if so, I didn't hear a direct answer as to why it needs to be extended. Can you answer that?
So I believe that the existing synthetic grate is sort of floppy. It's not the best material, so it's not particularly safe for use. So they're hoping to replace it with something sturdier, that's synthetic decking. And the reason for extending it is to get it out beyond the edge of the shrubs and the dense wetland pond vegetation, so that they can use the edge of the pier for recreation and for launching the kayak.
So they can't get the kayak out the way it is now. They're not kayaking currently?
I believe they could. It might be more challenging considering the dense vegetation. I don't know personally what they're doing at the property.
Okay. Thank you.
It's just that they're looking for an improvement.
Thank you, Angela. George?
Okay, so I'm a little confused, Darcy. You said that they have an ongoing condition that they can take the existing dock out to 32 feet. Is that correct?
No.
As a public, am I allowed to comment?
No,
Not
not yet.
Okay. Yes, so there was the original plan that was approved, the January 22nd, 2013 plan. And that's
the SE3-5062.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the length.
Same thing.
Yep. And then,
It looks similar to 33.5, what was proposed on the plan from SE 35062.
and then, let's see, what came in as an as-built was just this section, existing pier to be maintained and decking to be graded, synthetic decking. This was I'm sorry, let me make this a little smaller. Oops, that's too small, too far. And this is the May 5th, 2014 plan. And that's showing just the graded area.
Okay.
And then,
all right.
and then what I had in the photo there was they could either shift back and forth between these, either just use the graded area, or if they wanted to, be able to use the plan or the plan that was originally approved under the January.
Okay, so that was prior to the issuance of the CLC. In other words, they could extend that out. You allowed them to do that, and then they applied for the COC, and they got the COC on the shorter pier.
Well, yeah, it was a certificate of compliance, and they were just showing the existing conditions on May 5th, 2014, and Fred had noted that plan on the ongoing condition. It didn't, to me, it didn't mean that that's all you're going to get now. You only can have that small graded section. You can't ever put out the other part. And just to make it clear, when I went out there, I took pictures of what it was, and then I wrote that what they were allowed to do with the vegetation, and that they could extend the pier, or I shouldn't say extend a pier. They would be allowed to use the plan that was approved the January 22nd plan, whichever they wanted to do.
So if that's the case, why are we here? I mean, it seems like they could go and put that out if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I'm confused, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and I did not figure this. I mean, I didn't notice that I had in the file there was the picture where I wrote that they would be able to maintain and use the one that was approved in January. I got lost on the part about the helical anchors and everything, so this is the first time that I dug that out of the file.
George just made a great point, and I'd like for us and the fellow commissioners to, examine that. George, you're absolutely right, it seems.
It just seems to me that if you withdrew this, you can't put any helical piles in, but it seems to me that you can withdraw this and then put out what was originally approved.
Yeah.
Sounds. Luis?
We don't, that sounds like it's an open order of conditions, and we don't allow that. After 3 years, you have to apply for an extension, yada, yada, yada. So I can't understand how that.
It was an approved plan of condition. It was an approved plan. The order of conditions under 5026, if that's the right number.
62.
Reference the January plan. When they asked for the certificate of compliance, they submitted an existing conditions plan, but it was only the graded material. But they weren't ever saying we don't want to ever put out the full extension. That was just what was there. So at one time that must have come up, the question about, this was approved with the extension part of it, or the full length of it.
Well, under those circumstances, we will often say you have the option of reapplying to do something further, because if it hasn't been done and approved at the time of the certificate of compliance, then, I mean, the project is over. I don't understand, otherwise, I'm sure you do, Darcy, because you know a lot more than we do, but, it just doesn't sound right to me.
Could I,
Bill?
yeah, notwithstanding what Louise is saying, I mean, you know, I don't understand. Well, I get what she's asking, but to the point that George made that, well, why don't you just withdraw it? You have the right to do it. I was hearing that the original short section that's in almost a terrestrial, but you know, they wanted to rebuild that. That it seemed kind of floppy or something. I think I caught that, and therefore, if they were to withdraw it, then they couldn't like pull out that original fixed section and build a new one. And so
Right.
therefore, and so maybe we, you know, I personally, this commissioner wouldn't care about redoing that if the thing seemed kind of squirrely right now, and now you want to replace that. And if they already have that, you have this question, Louise is asking, can you, can't you, whatever, but then we could say now, yeah, well, we did before and we're going along with it now. So I don't think you want to just withdraw right now. That's my 2 cents.
Also, couldn't, if it were just that, short section that is in place now, could you, I didn't stand on it. I was afraid to stand on it. It looked really unstable. So I can understand why they want to firm that whole thing up. But could that be done under an M form, the maintenance form? Or is it too much of a change in order to do that?
So while you guys are talking for the last couple of minutes, in my mind, I'm thinking that, you know, previously if we haven't approved the SE3 number for that same length dock, that would kind of hold in terms of, you know, whether they want to repair the first sections or rebuild the whole section under the previous approved, you know, SE3 number. So to me, this is no different than that because your length is the same and so forth. So, you know, the question is like, you know, that seems to me that's kind of confirmed to my mind what George is saying, that, you know, you don't really need this permit applications. Does that sounds right, Darcy?
Yeah, I would take it as an freshwater maintenance if they wanted to do that.
You're talking
The only thing,
Darcy, including extending the length. That part of
this is why I put the note when I took the picture. I put the note because there was no way it made any sense if we had what Fred noted was ongoing conditions. Note, the as-built structure is shown on the plan titled Existing Conditions dated May 5th, 2014. Also in the ongoing conditions, it says number 3, motorized craft shall not be used or berthed at the pier. Well, that would be like obvious if they weren't allowed to have the full length of what was permitted. So I must have been the one that somebody had to make a call to make this clear, that were they only, because they asked for the certificate of compliance and what was shown there was just that small little graded section. Is that all that the certificate of compliance was being issued on, or would they be able to continue to put the full structure out? And that's why I put it in the file, that they would be able to put the full structure out because that was what was allowed in the special conditions. So technically, I really don't think you need to have this new filing.
the only thing is it's got to go back in as per the original plan. It can't be with Helix.
Yes, yep.
Yes. Even the first sections.
And just to clarify that, technically, if they put it back in, it wouldn't be seasonal. They'd be able to leave it in there.
The originally approved pier appears to be fixed and
Yes,
permanent,
yes,
not seasonal, all portions of it.
correct.
So it is a little bit of a different application than what we're proposing right now.
Wow.
So you prefer to have the seasonal pier right now?
The applicant did discuss with Matt Creighton before this hearing today that if the commission would rather have this entire thing, including the existing fixed pier, to be fully seasonal, they're willing to do that. So they're willing to pare down this so that nothing is permanent. The reason that they had paused was because of the pier installation dock company that suggested that they keep that existing portion of fixed pier just for the ease of installation and removal each year. But they did say that if it comes down to it, they are fine with the whole thing being seasonal.
Okay. So why don't we keep these applications as a seasonal piers of the last two sections and then with the fixed pier? That's the premise that we're going with these applications. So, Pete?
I think someone had their hand in front of me, both George and Louise.
Yeah, I'm all set.
Yeah,
Louise?
I've already expressed my concern.
Okay, so I'm new, my question. So what seems to be in front of us tonight is less environmentally intrusive than what's already okayed, which means I think this commissioner is happy with the project exactly as they're being presented. Again, if I'm missing something here, please enlighten me.
No, you got it.
Basically, all the freshwater pond we have been asking as a seasonal pier for many, many freshwater ponds. So
this is better what we have in front of us. I'm ready to make a motion.
And no pressure treated wood too is in our guidelines since that.
We don't have a DEP file number though, so we can't.
We don't have a DEP file number. So
yeah.
The only thing I would say is that we have to do a continuance.
We've got like 3 people from the public. Tom. We've got people
who want to
from the public who want to speak.
Yeah, the Reddens do and Kaiser.
Yeah,
okay.
Whenever it's my turn, I think he's told me I'm going to have a turn, so I'm trying to stay quiet.
Who's this?
Jim Redden still.
Jim, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, because I feel that you may not have had enough time to review everything, and I have not had a total amount of time to it, but the final conditions were written said this is not a complete project. You quotes to 65% done, and it says the existing project was done is what we're approving. So I understand what Starcy's saying, and it needs to be checked. And it could be everybody's right, but the documents I saw, which were signed in March, not in January, seemed to say this was accepted as an incomplete project. Otherwise, and then there's only a 3-year moratorium. So I just feel like it should be researched before it's voted on to find out whether you're voting on something existing or it's new, because that was sort of my question. But when I'm reading it, and I'm not trying to say that I am a professional engineer, I know how to read some of these documents, and I think you should look at them carefully before you decide whether there's an existing pier or not. And I could have another thing that says
we are looking at this.
The maintenance that was required under the last one has not been done, because as you can see, the float's still out there, and it's supposed to be a seasonal float. So you might consider that when they're saying they're going to make it seasonal.
I understand that. So what we are just talking about with coming to the conclusion is just saying that we are looking at this as a new applications for the seasonal pier that they are going in, except the first sections, which was a permanent, the 12 feet.
And we can potentially get a before and after condition that's clear to everybody, as opposed to what I still think I just heard the engineer say it's going to be seasonal or not. You're really going to put a 30-foot seasonal pier out there? That engineering wise, I don't know what they mean. It's not what they expressed in the drawings I've seen, but I may have the old drawings.
Okay, the other one is right in this.
Charlotte?
Sorry, yeah.
Charlotte, I have pretty much the same questions as my husband. But my most critical one was we were on the abutter list for the 2013 permit, but we were not included in the abutter list for this permit. And I wonder why, because we didn't find out about it till this weekend. Is there a change in some way? We are one parcel over from the Netter property, but we are a pond abutter. We're on Wayland Road.
We use the town of Barnstable GIS mapping, which is required for this application, which produces a buffer for the property. I don't know if maybe in the last few years the GIS system has changed. It does just barely miss your property. So it may have just been a change in the software over the ensuing 10 years.
Distance.
Well, under the premise that we all own a piece of the pie of the pond, we are abutters. Which somebody in this meeting suggested.
That was Bill.
Yeah, well, that's how great ponds operate, and we have dealt with that before. It's like a pot. So technically, she's right, I think.
Darcy, should we look into
No,
the abutters list?
It doesn't mean when somebody's doing a dock doesn't mean that all of a sudden you have to do everybody around the pond. It's still the same abutter list. That's
Land, abutter, not water.
Correct.
Yes.
Parcel. And then I guess the other thing I was concerned about is that don't permits ever expire? I mean, it's 10 years later and the project's not done, but some of you are saying that that's okay. It's approved. So that's one of my concerns, that conditions have changed in 10 or 11 years, or 10 years, I guess it is. And I am very concerned about that additional length of pier, to me, means more activity, which impacts the bird life, you know, the fish. Not so many fish in that pond, but a lot of birds. And finally, what do you mean by a seasonal? Does that encompass the spring, I presume? But that's really big bird activity time. So anyway, we are technically are not abutters, but any change to that, any lengthening of that pier would have a real impact on our visual enjoyment of the pond, and perhaps, you know, the bird life of the activity goes up. The noise, the activity during nesting and all that. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Who's the next one?
Eric.
Eric.
Hi. I sent Darcy a picture of what's there now because the descriptions have been very misleading. If you look at this picture, you'll see there's a boardwalk and there's about an 8x8 platform at the end with a swimming ladder on it and a railing around it. That's what's there now. That's what stays there all year. The other thing is just from a simply practical standpoint, at that place, the pond's about 350 feet across, 380 feet. If everybody built a 45-foot platform out into the pond, what do you think that would look like and how much pond would be left? We have to think of the whole repercussion and the fact that you're setting a precedent. And it's a poor precedent. What's there is fine. It has exactly what they said they wanted. I don't care what anybody else says. I also am a rated kayaker. It's much easier to get into a kayak from the shore, and they had shore access before they put the boardwalk over the top of it. And that's all I have to say. This is just, it's a no-brainer. But do you have a picture of it, Darcy? We sent it to Darcy about 10 minutes ago. Thank you.
It has not come through.
All right, we'll send it again then. We'll send it again. Thank you. I'll mute myself.
Mr. Kaiser, when you sent that originally to me and Darcy earlier today, your comment, you did not have Darcy's email address correct.
Oh. Okay. Well, we'll try again.
It only came to me.
It's Darcy, DARCY .Carley, KARLE at town. Darcy, DARCY Carle, Karle,
Yeah,
at town.barnstable.ma.us.
yeah. So that's what we sent it to.
Hannah, because
That's right.
without the DEP number, what continuance date do you need? Do you want 23rd?
We can meet your earliest next meeting that you can fit us on.
That's the 23rd, January 23rd. So I want to do the continuance so that when you can have time to prepare to revise the revised plans, to show exactly the material and all that stuff, and then we can vote that next time.
So the revisions that the commissioner is requesting is materials for the dock, seasonal and fixed, a revision of existing structures adjacent to the property that reflect existing conditions, and the other information that the commissioners would like to see on the revised plans.
One of the questions, they may not be a revised plan, is what is the average pier in the pond?
It would be nice to see the a diagram of the pond, and also the length, the proposed pier, and the length as well, just to get a sense of what the dimensions are relative to one another. Size of small pond, size of pier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We can reduce that to give a better visualization.
Yeah.
Could I have a motion to continuance these applications to January the 23rd?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Pagney,
Aye.
Sampu,
Aye.
unanimous.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all for your time.
We have one amended order, Red Lily Pond Project Associations to place benthic barrier in portions of the Red Lily Pond and Lake Elizabeth to improve the water quality and habitat by preventing regrowth of nuisance aquatic plants in area where plants have been cut and removed as shown on the Assessor's Map 226 and 227. Doc?
Actually, I think Patricia was going to start, and then
Well, I'll just say thank you. This is Patricia Deaton, President of Red Lily Pond, and I'm immediately going to turn it over to Doug for himself and Dr. Wagner to do the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you,
Patricia. And at this point, I'd like to share my screen, if I could, with the presentation that we have prepared.
Yes, please.
Okay, and let's see now, how do I get it called up as a... Okay, let's see. Thank you very much. My name is Doug Farquhar. I'm the Vice President of the Red Lily Pond Project Association. I'd like to make a very brief presentation, and then Ken Wagner will introduce himself. I think you're familiar with Ken from some other projects. He's our pond management expert. Basically, our proposal is to add a benthic barrier to a small portion of Lake Elizabeth this spring, with the opportunity to repeat that operation in both Red Lily Pond and Lake Elizabeth in future years with the acceptance of the herring warden and the conservation administrator. So the existing order of conditions was issued about 1.5 years ago. It permitted either clearing of vegetation with a barge, which turned out to be impractical because of the depth of the pond due to the failure of the dam several years ago. So we manually cleared the pond in October of 2 years ago, October 2022, July of last year, and removed about 10 tons of material in the process of those two operations. So the key factors that we'd like to emphasize here are that the benthic barriers would only be placed in areas where macrophytes have previously been harvested and removed. They would enable us to have lasting improvement of the removal of the very dense vegetation where the existing vegetation has been removed. The specific proposal for this year would be to install in the spring a benthic barrier that would cover less than 1% of the area of Lake Elizabeth. And then later we would seek permission to put more in. What is a benthic barrier? It's basically an inert material. It's like a big tarpaulin that covers the lake bottom and is vented so that it won't float up to the top due to any gases, I guess, that are generated by aquatic life. The iron rebar is inserted into sleeves, as you can see in this picture, so that the sheet sinks and remains on the bottom. The brand that we would use is a lake bottom blanket, and it would be placed as is shown in the picture with the brown side up. Under guidance from the Department of Environmental Protection, conservation commissions are encouraged to issue a negative determination of applicability to use a benthic barrier if it's up to 10% of the plant growth area and where there are no state listed or protected species present, which is the case in Lake Elizabeth and Red Lily Pond. So obviously we would be limited to at most covering 10% of the area where the plants can grow. So why do we need this? I've put 3 pictures here. The first is a composite of drone photos that was taken last May and July before we did the manual harvesting. This is in the area of Lake Elizabeth that is closest to Lake Elizabeth Drive. And then you can see in the second photo, this is what we accomplished in removing the macrophytes from that area. But that was on July 9th. On September 17th, a lot of the vegetation had returned. It's not as dense as it was before, but it still inhibits kayaking and canoeing. And I can tell you that from personal experience and talking with neighbors who do kayak and canoe in the lake. So more specifically for the first application, we would be installing connected 10-foot wide barriers for a total length of 240 feet. And it would just be over the area that where we harvested. Actually, it's just a portion of the area where we harvested macrophytes. And I know there's been a lot of discussion in this meeting about launching kayaks and canoes. There is, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but there is a new dock that you all authorized a couple of months ago that's been installed right there. And it is possible to board canoes and kayaks off of this dock currently. And the idea is that this would create a continued passage through the area that we cleared there, which is critical to make get around the lake. It's possible to get through this area here. It's very dense in here, but once you reach this point, if we install the benthic barrier, people will be able to circumnavigate the pond, which is really a lovely thing to do. I invite you all to come and do it sometime because it's public access. So why is it important? The dense vegetation in the ponds has both proved to be counterproductive or disadvantageous for kayaking and canoeing and fishing, but also it provides an unfavorable habitat for aquatic life. So still, even with the what we've done, I just wanted to show this brief video. This was taken about 3 weeks ago. Otters have returned to the ponds. I'm not saying this is because we did the clearing of macrophytes, but there is wildlife in the pond. There's a muskrat that we know very well as well that lives in there. There's some fish, pretty rare, but we're trying to improve the habitat, and we think that this would help. So with that, I will ask Ken Wagner to introduce himself to any of you who may not know him. and answer any. We'll both be ready and available to answer any questions that you might have. Ken.
Thank you, Doc.
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Very good. My role here is mostly advisory. These folks do a lot of stuff for themselves, which I appreciate, and you probably should too, because it means they're involved and they understand what's going on. Doug's given you a good overview. The only thing I wanted to point out is that I have used these barriers in quite a few other projects. They work very well. We've not had any regulatory issues with them. They do need to come out and be cleaned about every 2 years. You can flip them over in place, or you can pull them out and put them aside for a while. Very flexible to use. The DEP has been fine with using them at less than 10% of the growth area of the pond, which is the whole pond here. What they're proposing to you is 0.5% right now to try it out. We use it in swim areas a lot without even harvesting any vegetation first, because it's not all that dense in those cases. Here, they've actually removed vegetation and would use it to put down and keep it that way for a while. It creates edge effect in a lake like this. Actually, the fish love it. The sit and wait predators can hide in the weeds and dart out to get stuff. The bass cruise over it. It is not going to allow a lot of invertebrate life underneath it because it does cover the bottom. But we do find things going in around the edges. Has not been a problem in terms of populations. So pretty straightforward stuff. It's very easily done by volunteers. You're not going to do big areas. It's just too expensive, and it would have an impact if you covered the whole bottom. But in terms of localized control for plants, and specifically the type of thing they're talking about to get access for kayaks and canoes, it's a wonderful thing to do. It works out well.
Thank you, Ken. I have a couple of questions before I open up. One, you mentioned about that DEP guidance. So if you can you send us a copy of that guidance? I think we should have that in the file.
Yeah, it's online. It's a 34-page document. I think it's called something like Managing Aquatic Plants in Massachusetts, but we can send you a PDF of it, sure.
Or send us a link or something so that
they are revising it now. It has nothing to do with the barrier. We're actually redoing the practical guide to lake management in Massachusetts and making some changes, which then will be reflected in their guide as well.
Okay. And secondly, when Doug was explaining that blanket, the barrier, you're just using the rebar inserted on the blanket and they can settle at the bottom without having issues? Do you have to do any more anchoring to it?
No, the rebar slides into sleeves that are prefabricated, so they're out of the way. They're not going to cut anybody or do anything to anybody, and they are enough weight to keep it down by itself, yes.
Okay.
I've used a lot of different benthic barriers over the years. I met the guys that did this one, and they referred to me as Doubting Thomas because I criticized everything. And then when I actually got some and used it, I have to admit it's probably the best one I've ever used.
And thank you. Related, if I could hop on in terms of answering that question, one of the things that you need to do with these things is once they sink, they can be hard to find to pull them out and flip them over. So what you do is you attach buoys to the corners, or in this case, we will attach underwater line to the dock so that you can easily pull it up and begin the process of cleaning it up when need be.
Thank you. Question from the commissioner, Pete.
Okay, I was a bit hesitant when this first came around. 1% of the area as a trial, especially right along a high use area. I'm open to this as a trial. As has already been acknowledged, invertebrate life underneath this blanket will probably all die. I doubt if there's going to be any oxygen underneath the benthic barrier. Even the vents are probably mostly a one-way and certainly not allowing much dissolved oxygen to reach the majority of those sediments. I do worry about nutrient fluxes in this hypoxic or anaerobic environment and how that might affect the overlying water column algal production. I, though, am potentially open for this. One question that I do have, the sediment consistency, over which this barrier is going to be placed? Is it a very high porosity? Does it have a high water content to it? Is it really fluffy, mucky sediment, or is it fairly firm? Because that would speak a little bit to the benthic metabolism there. If it's really fluid, I suspect it's a large amount of respiration happening in those sediments, and so therefore likely to go very anoxic very quick. And I'm worried about phosphorus fluxes in that condition. So those are some of my worries, and I'd love for someone to address them. Thank you.
Okay, there's
Thank you, Pete.
easy answers to each of those. You're absolutely correct that there will be low oxygen under the barrier in areas, maybe not all the time, but certainly in the summer. So you're not, I mentioned that you won't have a lot of invertebrate life under it, around the edges, but not under the bulk of it. There is the potential when you get low oxygen to have phosphorus released. Again, this application is 0.5% of the pond area. It's really tiny. It's not enough to measure, but we do measure nutrients in the pond. So if there was a change, we would find it. And the sediment composition actually in this area is mostly sand. There's some muck around, but it's sandy because of the reverse layering project from years ago. So you shouldn't have much going on in terms of release or toxic materials.
Yeah, so that actually is all good information. Again, providing my support for this project as you have presented. Thank you.
And if I could just hop on again, Mr. Lee, I know that this part of the pond is sand because there are areas when we were harvesting the macrophytes last summer where the sand terminated and you fell in about 2 feet deeper into the muck. And so this area is almost entirely sand. Well, in fact, where we're putting it is sandy bottom.
Thank you, Doug. Louise?
This sounds like a good project, but I do have a couple of questions. How is this going to fit in with your process of pulling out vegetation? Are you going to do it immediately afterward, or there's going to be time for things to settle down, or what is your thinking on that?
So we've been advised that the optimum time to do this is late fall or early spring. Obviously, we missed late fall, so we'd be aiming for early spring this year. The idea is to do this only in areas where the macrophytes have been harvested, so that you're preserving the open waterway, if you will. And we would plan on doing this if I can find enough. The volunteers are mostly old guys, and if I can find enough old guys who are willing to go into the water in March, that's probably when we would aim to do it.
So you're going to put these barriers down in areas where you harvested material 6 months prior?
It's probably a little more than, it's probably more like 9 months if I'm doing the math right in my head. But obviously not a lot has happened over the winter in terms of the plants everything's underwater right now.
Okay, and then what is the roughly average depth of the area that you're going to be working in?
It's mostly 1.5 to 2.5 feet.
Okay, so the old men can easily handle it.
we managed to, and I should say that the picture that I showed of the macrophyte clearing operation included my grandson, who's age 6, so wasn't entirely old men. But yeah, we'll be wearing life preservers, but it should not be an issue in terms of installing this.
Yeah, in terms of the maintenance, that's every few years that you have to pull it out and you clean the under both surfaces. Is that right? Of the barriers.
Yeah.
Do you want to
again, you do it based on observation. I mean, the first ones I put in, we would come out every year, and then we realized, boy, this isn't really necessary. We've been tending to go 2 years. Once in a while, you can go 3. You just look at it. The problem is sediment will fall on top of it. Right. That may be less an issue in this lake because you don't have motorboats or anything whipping around. And then stuff will grow on top of it, which you don't want. But it's not hard to move. It's incredibly light. Without the rebar, you could pick up a panel the size he showed you in one hand. It's remarkably light. Again, I was very critical. I thought this was going to fall apart or tear right away. It's remarkably strong. Now you put the rebar in it, it starts getting some weight, but you just fold it like an accordion. It's really not hard to manage at all. 50-foot runs are really easy. 100-foot is doable. I wouldn't make them much longer than that. And then you just stack them up end to end or next to each other.
And what's the lifetime of these barriers? How long do they last?
That's a good question. I'm in year 9 for the earliest ones I use. So it's at least 9 years. They claim 10 to 20, but I don't know anybody that's had them for that long. There were some other with Aquascreen, which was a more porous version. Those would go 20 years. And again, looking at these, I was skeptical, but they've held up great. They don't look any different now than they did the first day we put them in.
Okay, well, thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Ken, for the informations, and you kind of asked my next question, so I'm good. Any other question from the commissioner?
Excuse me, Tom?
Yes, Darcy.
So this is limited to just this one area, and then maybe we want to have some type of annual report or a report after they remove the barrier. I just didn't, as far as a special condition.
If I might, we submitted a long-range plan about 1.5 years ago, and we're submitting annual updates on the long-range plan, and certainly we would be happy to continue that practice and report on the progress of the benthic barrier in there. And Ken mentioned as well, we're doing, in addition to the PALS program, water monitoring. Every time we do a manual macrophyte removal, or for that matter, if we can ever get a barge in there, a barge removal, we're doing water testing before and after. So those reports, of course, are being made available to the commission. So
okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
So when we draft up the amended order, we would just be adding a condition that you would be reporting on the benthic barriers along with the reports that are coming in.
Correct.
Thank you.
Good. Peter?
Yeah, just for the report that's coming in, the before and after information. Nutrients are unlikely to show up because rapid uptake probably by the algae phytoplankton in there. I would be most interested if it's not included to have Secchi depths. Really easy to do and a good indicator of clarity of that water with a before.
We do that. Unfortunately, the Secchi disc goes all the way to the bottom everywhere.
Oh, okay. Then that's good.
However, I do also get turbidity. And that, of course, gives you a numeric measure that can be used in place of it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I like the turbidity. So Darcy, let me try this, and then if it is incorrect, just correct me. Could I have a motion to approve this amended order as proposed, and including the monitoring of the barrier as part of the annual report, including some turbidity monitoring and Secchi disc monitoring data? Is that correct?
Sounds good.
So moved.
Yes.
Roll call.
Lampool.
Aye.
Tangy.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Byrne.
Aye.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. That is unanimous.
Thank you. Good luck.
And thank you very much. We appreciate it. We'll be back.
Yes. We have one continuances. Jean D. Barbieri, trustee, to permit a proposed seasonal pier ram and float for non-motorized use at 104 Great Bay Road, Barnstable, as shown on the Assessors Map 093, Parcel 011. This is a continuance from January the 9th, and we're waiting for the DEP number. The DEP has issued the number as SC3-6149. Could I have a motion to close the public hearing and authorize the staff to issue the order of condition?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster.
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Byrne.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Tangy.
Aye.
Lampool.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
Thank you. We have two easy certificate compliance. The first one is Thomas N. Hines, trustee. Thomas Ann and Joanne Hines Trustee Agreement, SE3-6049. The second one is Glen Lane Nominal Trust, SE3-6016. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster,
Aye.
Sampu,
Aye.
Tagny,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
that's unanimous.
Thank you. The next hearing is 6:30 on January the 23rd. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Foster,
Aye.
Hearn,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Tagny,
Aye.
Sampu,
Aye.
Gilmore, aye. We are adjourned at 4:55.